Okay. And where did that come from? Because I mean, you've been doing this a while. You're a success coach.
Yeah.
You're a motivational speaker. You're an author. So where did this come from a child? Like from a young girl. Is this how you always were? It was your
Oh.
parents that raised you this way. Where did all this come from? So tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, I love that you asked me about my childhood because no, this did not come from childhood. This was not anything I was ever going to strive to do with my life. I was on a completely different trajectory in my life. And like, I know you, I know you've lost things. I know you've had your own stuff that you've gone through. I actually got betrayed in 2019 at a board meeting where in 22 minutes, everything I worked for my whole life, everything I created since I was little, all I wanted to do with my life. Like when I was 14, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. And I went after it with everything, ran my own company for 12 years, went to a board meeting with people that I loved, people that I trusted, that I put on as board of directors on my own company. And in 22 minutes, they stole everything from me. They stole everything. And they said, according to California law, they didn't even have to give me a reason. And everything that I've worked for and everything that I thought I was and everything that I wanted to do in my life came to a screeching halt. So it was, out of the ashes, things will arise. That's kind of my success because I've become an author, as you said. I've become a success coach. I've become a speaker. I've been able to make crazy amounts of money that I never thought I could make and travel and do things all because of that betrayal. So one of the things that I speak on at a lot of events is that betrayal can be an open door to a better future. You just don't realize it at the time. So that's what happened. I got betrayed and went that direction. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, I had just finished reading the Bible myself, cover to cover. And the God was like, that's good. Good job. But do it again and do it in a year. And I didn't actually want to. I don't know if you've read it, Danielle, but it's a lot. It's a lot to read. And I didn't want to do it in a year. So I tell everybody I kind of owe everything to being accidentally successful from doing one Facebook Live asking to find 5 women that would read the Bible cover to cover in a year. And I had 20 women say yes right away. They shared it with their friends. I had 200 women in a day. And 2 weeks later, I had 6,700 women in a Facebook group to read the Bible cover to cover in a year. And I was crying on my bathroom floor. I actually did not want to do that. I'm not a pastor. I'm not an ordained minister. I'm not a scholar. I don't, none of that stuff. And I was freaking out. I'm like, why are you doing this? And he just said, you're a gatherer of people and you're a natural encourager. And this is what I want from you. And from that day to this day, it's just become revealed of like, that's one of the things that God wants from us is just to help everybody have that experience of it's the greatest success book ever written. Whether or not you believe in Jesus or not, the principles in there, the best business principles I've ever found, they're all in there. You can read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or you can read the Bible and it's just right in there, all the golden nuggets. So it was not anything that I started out from childhood at all to do, not at all.
So what were you like though, as a child, and what did your parents do? I mean, because this, to me, this is almost like I've been doing. I think I have 200 plus episodes of the podcast, and we've been doing this for quite a while. And I'm always very, very interested in how people grew up because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get people to see that it's not just the chosen few that can be successful or have the freedom, choices, and options. It's it's anybody that decides to go do those things, and it doesn't matter where you were raised, doesn't matter what kind of childhood you had. We could be victims or we can be victors. And so what
Yeah.
was your story as a small girl? Were you a good kid? Were you a bad kid? Because I know I was a bad kid. Okay, so I was a bad boy. So were you a good kid, a bad kid, and what did your parents do?
Okay, I love that question because I was both. So I actually was a great kid. In 8th grade, I won Student of the Month twice. And that was accidental. You're not supposed to be able to do that, but there was a misunderstanding with the office, and there was my picture twice on the wall. I think a lot of kids hated me for that. I was a 3.8 GPA amazing student until that summer when my parents got divorced. And my parents got divorced, and it wrecked me. And I started my freshman year of high school, and I was miserable and I was depressed and I felt abandoned by both parents. Now I know as an adult, I know they were just doing the best they could. but I felt like no one cared anymore. No one saw anymore. And I just became a completely different child. I had a 1.5 GPA. I was ditching school all the time, hanging out with the wrong crowd. I actually almost didn't graduate high school because of all of those choices kind of catching up to me. I felt like school was optional. Didn't realize that was not going to work out very well. Just made a lot of those wrong choices. People used to pay me to change their grades. I was cheating. I mean, just doing all of the sort of wrong things. And I feel like I only graduated high school because there was one counselor that believed in me. And he created, as a senior, I had to go to 0 period PE with the freshmen. Like it was horribly embarrassing. And then they created a study program for a 7th period just so I could actually graduate. I had really great parents. I was raised in LA. I was raised in LA. There was nothing that I lacked. Great life, stay at home mom, everything awesome. And then the divorce. I mean, I'm one of 7 kids. I have 6 brothers. 6 brothers and me. I feel like that explains a lot to you about my personality of how I was driven to success since I was little. The great Les Brown says you got to be hungry in life, right, to get places. And I told Les Brown, I was hungry every day because if I didn't get to the dinner table and quickly eat, I would be hungry because I wouldn't even have food. Those boys
and your
kept
brothers probably wanted your brothers like to eat too, right? So I mean, for sure they were big boys, I'm sure.
Yeah. So they kept me on my toes. They kept me very competitive. I feel like a lot of my work ethic of being a hard worker and not caring about, getting beat down or failing. I tell people as a coach, you have to fail your way to success. This whole, like, I'm afraid to fail thing, it's crazy because that's how you become successful, is through failure and reevaluation and getting up and doing it better, which I know you've had your seasons where you've done a lot of that, right? So this whole, like, we're afraid to fail, but what if you got to fail the 1,000 times, right, to get to where you are now? So they kept me strong. They kept me, just continually being in it and being okay to fail and being okay to hear no.
So why do you think your parents getting divorced, why do you think that really broke you? Like what was it about that moment in your life that really tore you apart? I mean, because it sounds like it's pretty devastating for you.
Yeah.
And how old were you, by the way? And how old were you?
I was 13. Sorry. I was 13.
Okay.
Yeah, it was several things. It was one, mom then had to get a job. So she wasn't really in the house. So she wasn't really paying attention to me anymore. And dad wasn't in the house. And one of the mistakes my parents made was they didn't force me to go to my dad's every other weekend. I felt like being at my dad's was too painful. And I wish they would have made me go. So I stopped seeing my dad at all. Like suddenly my dad wasn't even in my life. Now my mom's working. My mom had no clue till I was almost a senior that I'd failed anything. She didn't ask to see my grades. And when she did, I forged them. So, she didn't know. So it was both of the parents really not being in my life anymore. And I know they were doing the best they could. And the second thing is, where I was born and raised, there wasn't a lot of divorce. And so people didn't know how to handle it. And everybody in my life, from my friends to adults, to people that we would interact with, they were treating me different. And it was even from that, like, hey, are you okay place? And I felt like I couldn't just be me anymore. I couldn't just be Summer Day that showed up and was treated the same. I felt like everywhere I was going, people treated me different. It may be why I just decided to be different. I started dressing different and talking different and cussing all the time because I didn't want to be me. I didn't want to be me anymore. And I didn't like the way that the world was treating me. And everybody meant well. It's kind of like when someone passes away. I've learned that people, when somebody passes away, they get tired of hearing, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. They almost like they want to be able to still be partially them without being reminded of it all the time. So I was reminded of it all the time. It was embarrassing because people weren't getting divorced back then. And I was like the only kid I knew at school. And it was embarrassing a lot.
If you like this video and you want to watch another one, click right here. If you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.